I'm guessing many of you have been to a wedding where at some point during the service, these words were spoken. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrong. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. There you have it. Probably one of the most famous Bible passages about love is found right here in the book of 1 Corinthians, chapter 13. And there's no doubt it's a beautiful passage. It seems almost poetic, so it's not a surprise that it's plucked out and read at something like a wedding, where these descriptors of love, they would make sense to highlight as these sort of ideals we'd want every couple to search after in order to have the good life. So first, here are a few things we need to note about this famous love passage. First, we English speakers are at somewhat of a disadvantage when it comes to the word love. We use the same word to describe many things. I love my husband, but I also love eating avocados. I love being outside. It doesn't quite work if I think about the love that Paul describes here as it applies to avocados. In Greek language, which Paul and the Corinthians spoke, they had 4 distinct words to describe love, and the one used in this passage is agape. And truly, no matter how much I do love eating a perfectly ripened avocado or taking a beautiful fall walk outside, that type of love doesn't come close to the love that Paul is describing here. This is love that's unconditional. It's sacrificial. It's a love that is completely selfless. It's the highest form of love, you might say. Now, come back to the image of a wedding with me for a minute. And I think we read these passages from 1 Corinthians because, if we're honest, we desperately want our friends, our family, ourselves even, to experience the love that we hear about in chapter 13. But now, think honestly about any of the loving relationships that you might be in now or you might have been in at some point in your life. Is it wonderful to show love through patience and kindness? Yes, of course it is. But are you always patient and kind with your partner? Human nature just doesn't work out that way. Or, as much as I wish truly I could tell my husband that I keep no record of wrongs in our relationship, we both know that is not always true. The love that Paul describes here is something we all want to have. It's something we all want to give. But in a lot of ways, it's so far beyond what we can even imagine. So we have to ask, what's the point? Why would Paul include this memorable chapter in his letter to the Corinthian people if it seems impossible to attain? Well, we have to remember what Paul has done up to this point. He's offered guidance on the ways that the people of Corinth can kind of refocus their ideas about worship and about communal life as a whole, about their actions, about the consequences of failing to honor the other people in our lives. Of course, Paul is also teaching them about the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus throughout this entire letter. Now, we don't have any written copies of the Corinthian letters that came back to Paul, but we can assume that he's responding to a variety of scenarios, situations that they present to him. And if you put yourself in the shoes of the Corinthians for a minute, this community that's always known at things a certain way, we know that it's hard to change. If a group of people has done something in the same way for a really long time, if we see this collective buy-in and things feel really good in that moment, we don't even realize when we have blinders on. What would even motivate us to change if it feels good to me, myself, and mine around me in this little bubble? But Paul is not just in it to provide people with a feel-good moment. The love that he describes is not the love that just triggers endorphins and on we go. Paul is in this for the long game. He knows that the Corinthians, they need something grounding them as they work to understand and to follow Jesus. And that something has to be love. Love never fails, he writes in verse 8. Other translations say love never ends. All of this other stuff that we try to do to win one another over by throwing around our words or our knowledge, our power, our control, all of that causes chaos, and that's going to ultimately come to an end. The only thing that will truly ground us is love. And yes, I think Paul is saying we should try and aim for the love that he describes here. Keep reading it at your weddings. But it's not because we're trying to be more perfect or more godlike in the process. It doesn't somehow get us closer to God, but it does help us reflect God more clearly to those around us. Love, it's about listening. Love is recognizing that people have their own struggles, they have their own stories. Love is a desire for the presence of the other, making sure people are seen and known even if they are different from us. Love is hard conversations. It's building a bridge to those family members who you haven't spoke to in years. Love is hard, there's no doubt. But love is persistent from God to each of us. And so it is worth it for us to lead with love in everything we do. So here I have a couple of questions for you as you read 1 Corinthians chapter 13 today. Number 1, what are the barriers that prevent us from loving in the way that God loves us? And number 2, make a love plan. I'm serious. Be practical. What would it look like for you to be grounded in love?